Today on Building the Open Metaverse.
In the context of web development, the most successful projects tend to be open source. That was my new world, and I had to adapt. So now it's like everything we do, the default is that it's open source.
Welcome to Building the Open Metaverse, where technology experts discuss how the community is building the open metaverse together. Hosted by Patrick Cozzi and Marc Petit.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Building the Open Metaverse Season 6, the podcast that showcases the community of artists, developers, researchers, executives, and entrepreneurs who are building the Internet of Tomorrow. My name is Marc Petit, and my co-host is Patrick Cozzi. Patrick, how are you?
Hey, Marc. I'm doing well. And as you know, 3D on the web is really dear to my heart. And this season, we're exploring in more detail how the web is becoming an increasingly viable platform for real-time 3D. And today's guest is a total OG of graphics on the web.
Yes, absolutely. Today's guest on the show needs no introduction for anyone familiar with the world of web-based gaming and immersive experiences. We have with us Will Eastcott, a gaming industry veteran with many years of experience working on blockbuster AAA titles like Call of Duty. However, Will is best known as the co-founder and CEO of PlayCanvas, the pioneering open-source game engine that has revolutionized how rich 2D graphics, games, and interactive experiences are created and delivered on the web. Will's passion for open standards and democratizing game development led him to open source the PlayCanvas engine back in 2014, and that pivotal move kickstarted a vibrant global community of developers leveraging PlayCanvas power. Will, we're very happy to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marc. Yeah, it's a pleasure to join you and Patrick today. Looking forward to our conversation.
Well, great to see you. And to kick things off, could you share a bit about your early career and how you got into game development?
So back in the 80s, when I grew up, every kid in the UK had an 8-bit microcomputer. It was just kind of taken for granted that every kid learned how to program. I think it was around 1984 where I played a game called Elite, a 3D space trading game that you could play on like a 32 kilobyte 8-bit microcomputer. And I mean, you could say that's my first experience with an explorable universe, or maybe even a metaverse where, you could kind of go anywhere and do anything. And I think from that moment, I was really hooked on computers and video games. And so, I mean, fast forward to going to university, I started computing at Imperial in London. And in my final year, I had to do an internship. So we had a lot of investment banks that came into Imperial. They were looking for interns. And I thought, I'm just not going to fit in an investment bank. So I went to see the careers officer and I said, look, do you have anything a little bit different, a little bit unusual? And she said, yeah, there's a VR company in Manchester, and they're looking for an intern. So I took that opportunity, and when I went to work there, the office was just full of Silicon Graphics workstations. So I was working on an Indigo 2 machine, and that was probably worth about $30,000 or something. And just across the other side of the room, there was an SGI Infinite Reality, which was probably worth about $500,000 or something. So you can imagine, as like a computing student, I was on cloud nine. I was really enjoying myself. I was learning to program C, working on sort of, asset processing code, and getting my first taste of WebGL. So when I came to leave university, I ended up at Criterion Software, and that really started my journey into the video gaming industry.
Interesting. Criterion, it was quite an adventure. It was one of the first commercial games middleware and even game engine solution on the market, RenderWare. So what are your, and the Honorable Mike King and all that gang of people, what are some of your most memorable experiences or proudest moments from Criterion?
I'm somebody that's fascinated by technology. I'm the kind of guy who would go down to an arcade and just like stare at the games instead of playing them, right? So anything where I get to see new technology in action, I love that. So I used to get an opportunity at Criterion to to experience the very first revisions of new console hardware. And that was incredibly exciting for me. So, for example, Sony shipped Criterion, I think the first PlayStation 2 dev kit in Europe outside of like a Sony studio. I think these machines were called EB2000s. They were like a metal cube. And these were the kind of things where, if you go up and touch them and you hadn't like discharged your static electricity first, you'd like, made them inoperable. But like unwrapping one of these things and then going through the sort of auto-generated translations from Japanese, and like it was so exciting. It was like Christmas come early. And so yeah, playing with these early dev kits was like a lot of fun for me and my teammates. But then beyond that, like I was working on the RenderWare engine as a programmer, but I was unlike most of the other guys on the team, and I would actually have to get on a plane and go and visit a lot of studios. So I would often have to go and work with game teams around the world. One time I flew up to Rockstar North and they showed me a game prototype, and they said, "Yeah, do you want to have a game?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm playing this thing. I'm controlling this guy. He's running around and jumping in and out of cars and stuff." And I was just sitting there thinking, I just don't get it. Like normally you get in a car and you have to drive to the finishing line in like the smallest time possible or something. But this didn't seem to have a goal, right? And of course it was a sandbox game. It was Grand Theft Auto. And so I kind of walked away from that just not quite understanding this concept of a sandbox game, which is kind of weird considering I loved Elite so much. But of course it went on to be a massive success. And so it was really fun that I got to play a part in helping Rockstar build Grand Theft Auto. I helped Activision build Call of Duty on PlayStation 2. Got to work, on FIFA with EA and lots of other games besides. So, I mean, it was a massively fun experience where I got to see the world, work with lots of talented teams, and work on lots of cool games.
So, well, you clearly had a very, very impressive career working on those AAA titles, and I appreciate your work. I spent a lot of time playing Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto. I want to ask, kind of what inspired you to shift gears a bit and then focus on building a web-based game engine?
I remember in 2010, I think I saw the WebGL spec being released. And I think for anybody who cares about interactive graphics, for that milestone to arrive and not see that as a massive opportunity, like I was so excited to get started with WebGL. And I thought, this is a new adventure for me. Like, I didn't know JavaScript at the time. I wasn't a web developer. I didn't have any experience with that. But it was clear that WebGL was going to augur in a new era of a 3D web where, there'd be gaming experiences, e-commerce experiences, visualization, simulation, and lots besides. So, and plenty of things that I didn't even foresee at the time, but I knew it was a massive opportunity. So yeah, I resigned my role at Activision and immediately set about starting up PlayCanvas.
And you became an entrepreneur.
That was not in my blood at the time. So I was just, really focused on being a software engineer. But I just had a dream to build something new. And luckily I met a lot of people on my journey who kind of helped me learn new skills and just helped me along the way.
So when you think back about that time, jumping, to become an entrepreneur to a brand new technology like WebGL, what were the biggest challenge from those early days?
Just the difficulties surrounding raising money was like tough for me. Like we were based in London, and I didn't really have access to Valley investor community. But we joined an accelerator called Techstars. We were in their first cohort in London, and I learned a lot on the business and sales and pitching side from participating in that program. So I'd always recommend that first-time entrepreneurs do look to join an accelerator and just build their network that way. So that was great. I would say, like, well, on the business side of things, another problem I think that was slightly problematic, shall we say, for us was that Apple was a bit late to the party integrating WebGL into Safari on iOS. So, I think it was something like summer of 2014 when it finally landed in Safari, at least when Apple announced they were supporting it. And so we were kind of already working on PlayCanvas for like 3.5 years before our content actually ran on iOS. And so in those early years, I'd say there were many, many conversations with creative agencies and customers who were like, yeah, this is interesting, but, you can't run this stuff outside of Android and the desktop. So, we'll pass for now.
And then you mentioned 2014, and I believe that's also when you decided to make PlayCanvas open source. And I was curious a bit about the motivation behind that and then the impact that it had.
Open sourcing technology, again, wasn't really something that was in my DNA. I'd come from, EA, Activision, Sony, where the idea of open sourcing in-house technology was just absolutely unheard of at the time. So I guess I had a reflex to it that was to kind of like protect the IP we were building. And we'd spent a huge amount of effort building our code base, and the idea of just like granting liberal access to it under an MIT license or something, that was kind of difficult for me to get used to. But over time, you spend time on GitHub and you spend time with other developers, and you start to think less about protecting your technology and more about what's right for the developer. Because if you have a mindset of building something that is built with the developer's needs in mind, then you'll win in the long run, right? So from a developer's point of view, they want ultimate visibility and access and flexibility to work with technology. And, that's a good thing, because if you can deliver what the developer needs, you're going to build a very healthy community around that technology. And we've seen GitHub, turn into something that is really truly loved by developers, where you can build really vibrant communities. And so I've seen kind of, some real massive benefits from taking that leap of faith and then putting our technology onto GitHub and slapping that MIT license on there. So no regrets now. It's just in the early days that was hard for me. So I would like to think people these days wouldn't kind of hesitate, maybe like I did. So the only mistake I'd say I'd made is that I wish I'd done it sooner, I guess.
What or who got you over the fence to say, I'm not sure to actually doing it? Because you're right, in 2014, open sourcing was not as understood as it is now.
In the context of web development, the most successful projects tend to be open source. And that was my new world. And I had to adapt to like a web dev ecosystem and just kind of like think in that way. And it just took me a long time, I guess. It took me, like I said, probably 2 or 3 years to really change my mind around all of that. So now it's like everything we do, every new product we do on the PlayCanvas team, it's just automatically, the default is that it's open source. Like there'd have to be a really strong reason why we wouldn't open source something.
So you touched on something. What's your relationship? Because there's multiple open source engines, 3D engines on the web. I mean, is there a community? Do you guys talk? Do you guys compete? What is the relationship right there?
Although we're not like in regular contact and like calling each other every week, the community is very friendly, very supportive, very respectful, and that makes it so pleasant to be part of. I mean, I've just from previous years, like, maybe in the early days of running PlayCanvas, there have been instances where, there've been some maybe difficult conversations with other startups. Maybe, you feel like a startup's kind of like cloning what you're building, or, there's some things like that go on. But I feel like all of the leaders now working on these projects, they're really great folks, and I think everybody wants success and the best for everybody else working in this space. Because, I think there's overlap, sure, between some of these products, but we learn a lot from each other, and I just think we help each other advance. So I think generally speaking, it's a really healthy community.
And Marc, I would +1 everything that Will just said. I think that folks want to see 3D on the web go farther, and they really admire all the other projects. And Ken Russell from the Google Chrome team, who you remember, who came on the podcast, chair of the WebGL working with Kronos, when he would do the SIGGRAPH boss, he would, ensure that everyone would be able to show their work and build, I think, a very inclusive community. So I think it's been very positive. So well, continuing the PlayCanvas story. So I believe back in 2017, PlayCanvas was acquired by Snap, and was curious about some of the strategic rationale there, and then kind of how that's helped you continue the growth.
I'm pretty good at making friends at companies, and over the years, we've had pretty close relationships with the likes of Facebook and Google and Mozilla and so on, and Snap. So throughout 2016, we were chatting with Snap, and so they knew who we were, what our technology could do. They knew our skill set, and towards the end of that year, they had a gaming platform on the drawing board, and based on my network and the team's skill set and the tech that we have, we were a really good fit for helping design and build this platform, which turned out to be Snap Games, that eventually was launched in I think it was April 2019. And so when this opportunity came along, I was floored. The opportunity to build a gaming platform that would serve like hundreds of millions of gamers, it was beyond my wildest dreams. So, for me, it was not the most difficult decision I ever had to face. So we joined Snap in early 2017, and we really did focus very hard on making Snap Games as awesome as possible over the next couple of years. Again, got to work very closely with like a curated set of developers that were selected for the platform. And those were really fun days where, I was just seeing some incredible mobile games being built. And to me, it was an opportunity to show what the mobile web is capable of. If we picked the best game development talent and we paired them with like some really top quality tools, we wanted to show what kind of gaming experiences you could do, and that they could go head to head with native gaming experiences. And I think we proved that.
So would you say that acquisition has accelerated the growth of PlayCanvas and its role in the open web?
I don't know what would have happened had we remained independent. Who knows? All I can say is that I'm really happy with where PlayCanvas is at today. I'm happy with our mission and our vision for the future. And so I think things are going super well, and Snap's a great home for us, and we're continuing to build like a super talented team that's solving some very difficult problems, and that's what I love to do. So it's going really well.
We all know that Snap went through some ups and downs, and I think seeing their unwavering commitment to web gaming is great to see. It probably speaks also to the fact that you're running a very tight ship. So
I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think when you've run a startup and you know how to run something very leanly, I think that's appreciated by the people that are in charge of spending money. So I think we're also a team that's really good at seeking out ways to apply our technology to advance Snap's interests, and just be building technology that's just generally strategically interesting and important.
In terms of authoring 3D content for the web, there's multiple ways of doing it. We mentioned a few 3D graphics native engines, and Unity has a very good export from to WebGL and WebGPU, and there are platforms like SimplyStream for Unreal Engine. So how do you position, how do you describe the unique aspect of PlayCanvas? We've seen a lot of people pick up PlayCanvas. What's their motivation? What is unique about PlayCanvas that drives people to use it?
Well, I guess PlayCanvas is really built for developers who want to treat the web as their lead platform. So, other engines, let's say, you mentioned Unity there, they've essentially treated the web like a platform that you just port to. It's just another platform that you output a build to. But actually, the web is very different. It's not just like a console or some new hardware device. It's got very specific properties. So, when you load web content, you're streaming it. So the way in which you sort of incrementally load your scenes is important. How you compress your scenes is important. Also, download times is really important because, you want to avoid your end users sort of bouncing within the first few seconds. And to do that, you have to make your content interactive within a very short time. So making the initial payload super low and then using asynchronous streaming is a big deal. So the PlayCanvas engine itself, the runtime is about, I think 300 kilobytes, and that's before you do tree shaking. So we're able to have content load and become interactive within, like the blink of an eye. It's super important on the web. And then beyond that, if you're developing on the web, you're debugging, you're profiling, you're just doing day-to-day development. That's difficult if you're using like a cross-compiled WASM engine. If you're using an open source JavaScript engine, you can open the dev tools, you can set breakpoints, the code is human readable, you have source maps, you have great profiling tools. So from a developer perspective as well, it's a really great experience. And then on top of that, we've built a platform which is very unlike other game engines because it's browser hosted. It's kind of like Unity blended with Google Docs in a way. It's this online real-time collaborative platform. And the first time as a content creator, you get into a PlayCanvas scene and you start working side by side with another user and you're both building up a scene together. That's a real revelation when you first experience that. I recommend people try that. And of course, a lot of people say, yeah, but like sometimes you want to work on your own. Well, that's fine. In PlayCanvas, you can essentially branch off the main scene, work in isolation, and then fold your changes back. So you have the flexibility to work however you like. But yeah, that's important too. And I guess I just finished with the open source piece as well. So again, like companies like Unity say are not embracing open source, shall we say, whereas we want to give our customers access to all of our code base so that they can do what they like with it, they can contribute, they can feel part of our mission. So I think that's another big deal as well.
So if our listeners wanted to get a taste of a PlayCanvas, what do you recommend they try? Is there a game or an innovative experience that you would recommend?
There's a really awesome game studio who's building stuff with PlayCanvas right now that I'm a big fan of. They're called Onrush, and they became well known for building an FPS game called Venge. So if you go to venge.io and play their FPS game, it's pretty fun. And right now the team is sort of almost kind of live tweeting the development of their latest game, and it's clearly a GTA in the browser kind of game. And I've been waiting for a company to build a game like that, and execute it really well. And they seem to be doing a good job of that. But there's a ton of like really, top tier awesome brands that are publishing PlayCanvas content onto their web properties. You see companies like BMW, Polaris, Cartier, Montblanc, Fjallraven, like loads of really cool brands are building sort of e-commerce or advertising based experiences as well. So if you go to, or if you Google PlayCanvas awesome list, it's essentially a GitHub hosted list of just like a ton of content that you can just click through and just see. But But yeah, there's a ton of stuff out there.
So, well, we spoke a lot about the tech that PlayCanvas is built upon, and many of which are open standards. So I was wondering if you could speak a bit about your philosophy in adopting open standards and how it's helping you push boundaries.
When we started PlayCanvas, we needed a file format to load model and animation data. I just designed a JSON format. I thought that made sense. Of course, down the road, you get to know JavaScript better and the browser better, and discover that like parsing JSON is very expensive. And then, of course, the GLTF format was born sometime afterwards. And I mean, it kind of had to wait until version 2 before it was impossible to pass up. But by version 2, yeah, like it was extremely well designed, and it was a natural choice for us to move to GLTF and dump our JSON format. And that meant that we didn't have to spend time designing that file format. We just had to adhere to the spec, just write an importer and an exporter, you're done. And then on top of that, you get to leverage all of the incredible tools that are built by the GLTF ecosystem, and even participate in the steering of the format. So, I've been involved in conversations around adding physics to GLTF, and I'm sure we've been at similar GLTF forum events where we've talked about some of these topics, and it's great to be part of that community. So yeah, it makes 100% sense.
And I remember before GLTF that I was working on something that was JSON plus binary, and then as soon as I saw GLTF, I'm like, oh, let me go check this out. Are there any directions that you think GLTF should be going?
I was a supporter of adding physics, and I guess no reason not to add audio. So I think that all makes sense, especially like in a metaverse context where, you should be able to like define an object and be able to take it from space to space, right? Like, wouldn't that be cool if I could like, have a lightsaber or something, and I could move through the metaverse and hold this thing, and like I should be able to interact with it, and it should sound the way, and it should, like physically behave the same way it does like across all the different spaces. Like I'm totally signed up to that. But the format itself is becoming more and more complex. There's more and more extensions being made. So I guess I do have a bit of concern that it's going to become maybe bloated or unwieldy over time. And there's big questions to be asked about like how you cross-reference data across like different GLTF scenes. And so I know that these things are being worked on. And like I essentially trust the GLTF steering group and the spec writers to make good decisions there. Like I think there's a good track record. But yeah, like I say, I think the only thing I'm concerned about is just the spec becoming so bloated that like just to implement it, it's going to be like writing a browser, right? Like it's so incredibly complex.
You're building a game engine. Do you think game logic belongs ultimately to GLTF? They have transportable smart objects and game logic.
If you look at things like e-commerce use cases where you want to deliver like, I don't know, like a microwave that some company is trying to sell, and you could set up some interactions, maybe some hotspots and interactions with that 3D object, which means that it's in the hands of the content creators, the artists, to define those interactions instead of making it something that a programmer has to re-implement time and time again. So from that point of view, I think it makes a lot of sense. But when it comes to maybe replicating like the real world using behavior graphs, I think the jury's still out for me whether something so complex, like a living, breathing environment can be represented that way. But it's exciting.
I want to get an opportunity to discuss and highlight maybe what's going to mean for the browser. So can you speak to the kind of things that we would be able to do in a browser with technologies like WebGPU and WebXR?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned 3D Gaussian splatting, and that's something that the PlayCanvas team is pursuing quite aggressively at the moment. We built this tool called Super Splat. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's basically an editor, an optimizer for 3D Gaussian splat scenes. And as part of that, we've built like a really high performing runtime for rendering 3D Gaussian splats. So I'll tell you something that I did recently, which was so I think it was OpenAI launched Sora to have GenAI generate videos, and I took one of the videos, which was a viewpoint moving through an art gallery, and I fed that video through the 3D Gaussian splat generation tooling, and generated the splat, loaded it into PlayCanvas, dropped in a first-person character controller, and then moved around that scene. So, like, I'm really interested in this idea that you can use GenAI to generate environments without needing to write a single line of code. I didn't have to write any code to achieve that. And right now, the results are a little bit rough and ready, but you can see where this is heading, where, GenAI is going to be able to, like, generate coherent, consistent 3D environments that you can walk around. And maybe in the next few years, we're looking at, rendering those scenes using WebGPU and being able to explore them in WebXR. But further down the road, we're talking, like 5 to 20 years, that sort of time period, maybe. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, things are accelerating pretty fast, so I could be completely wrong here, and it could happen before that. But we're going to have, like, 3D environments that will be, like, hallucinated in real time on the GPU, right? So what that means for the future of PlayCanvas, I'm not entirely sure. I'm just kind of along for the ride, and I'm finding it quite exciting. But like, it's incredible how things are moving right now. So like, in the short term, we're going to see photorealistic experiences, e-commerce applications, whatever, represents in the browser, powered by WebGPU and WebXR. But down the line, GenAI is going to be disrupting big time.
Well, so much to unpack here. So for Gaussian splatting, I mean, how far do you think it goes? Does it replace triangles?
We're very early in the R&D phase for Gaussian splatting. Remember, it was only really a thing from last summer when INRIA released their paper along with the tooling on GitHub. And it's amazing to see what's been achieved in less than a year. So right now, people are kind of working on runtimes for static scenes, but there's certainly a lot of R&D going on to solve problems around animating 3D Gaussian splats. You hear about this concept of 4D Gaussian splats, where you're essentially doing a Gaussian splat capture, but over time. And we've been thinking on our team about, what are the options for just like applying skinning techniques to a Gaussian splat and just doing, relatively cheap animation that way. And but there's a lot of research going on into this right now. We're going to see some like incredible incremental advances over the next year.
Is SuperSplat open source?
It is, yeah. If you go to playcanvas.com/supersplat, you'll find the tool, and then there's a link to the GitHub repo. So yeah, if anybody wants to join the mission and help advance this Gaussian splat technology, then SuperSplat's definitely the most popular place to edit Gaussian splats right now. And yeah, like so you can get started today. You can use Luma AI or Polycam or the INRIA tools, do a capture, load it into SuperSplat, and chop out part of the scene or clean it up or optimize it and drop it into PlayCanvas, make a little demo. It's a lot of fun, actually. And the cool thing is, the reason why I'm so excited about it is that suddenly anybody can create photorealistic content that looks amazing. It's not the case that, it's like, oh, hey, I'll do some photogrammetry and then I'll construct a mesh and then I'll make normal maps and create all of the PBR textures, which needs like a lot of expertise. Now it's just, record a video, generate a PLY file, drop it into SuperSplat, save it out, drop it into PlayCanvas.
And you reminded us that's less than the technology was released last July, so it's not even a year old right now. So let's talk about, let's get your crystal ball out and how do you see AI and machine learning impacting, interactive and games development process in the coming years? And if you can tell us about PlayCanvas Copilot as well.
We did just release a Visual Studio plugin for PlayCanvas, which allows you to write PlayCanvas scripts and they kind of sync with your project on the server. And the cool thing about running your VS Code is that you get access to all of the awesome VS Code extensions, including GitHub Copilot. So yeah, like that's, I guess, the first application of AI for PlayCanvas developers, but there's so much more we could do. So obviously, if you were, I don't know, wanting to create like a thumbnail for your project, I mean, using Gen AI, like a service like DALL-E, for example, to do that is an obvious thing. So you can just hook into a service like that and download an image. But of course, over time, we're going to see 3D assets being generated by Gen AI to sufficiently high quality that, they could be used in production.
You have a time frame in mind for that?
I actually think it's within the next 2 years, maybe not the next 12 months, but probably the 12 months after that, we'll have some like seriously impressive assets being generated by AI. So yeah, I don't think we're going to have long to wait, basically. And the thing we have to keep remember is this stuff is accelerating.
So any other emerging technology that you're excited about?
On the subject of AI, I think it's going to enable a new generation of content creation tools, because at the moment, what tools developers doing are trying to retrofit Gen AI services into their tooling. So yeah, like in PlayCanvas, we can add a coding assistant, or we could add some like automation, which allows you to like, create a scene by giving some prompts. There's going to come a tipping point where we're going to have to go back to the drawing board, and we're going to have to build a new generation of content creation tools, which not just play nice with Gen AI, but also play nice with new computing platforms. So if you're, if we're talking like spatial computing, and we're talking about like voice, eye tracking, gesture tracking, those sorts of things, where you can interact with a tool in a different way. We've seen a lot of interesting progress coming from Meta with Quest. We've seen Apple release the Apple Vision Pro, and there's a lot of prototyping of next generation tools that I'm seeing people share on Twitter. Like lots of really cool ideas about how you can, maybe sculpt content in 3D with your hands, and just interesting new ways to create.
Well, definitely a lot of emergent tech to track here. What do you think it's going to take for instant web gaming to really take off?
I would love to see web gaming grow in popularity. I think there's some things that are holding it back. I mean, off the top of my head, things like the way sort of like payments are managed through the web is not great right now. The discovery mechanisms that we have on the web are very different to what you have, say, on mobile platforms through app stores. There's like a learned process that every mobile device user fully understands, where you visit an app store, you look at the charts, you pick a game in the top 10 or something, you read the reviews, you install. It's a lot harder on the web. You have a massive audience at your disposal, but reaching them is really tough. So you have to be some kind of like wizard growth hacker to be like super successful when building a web game these days. But yeah, like I'm seeing some like some of the, like I talked about the OnRush studio earlier. I mean, studios like that are building these sort of drop in, drop out, casual MMO style games. I think they're showing a lot of promise. And if we can just solve some of these problems around monetization, and also have the platform holders, the browser vendors, work on their browsers to make them play nicer with browser gaming, especially on mobile, that would help a lot too.
I'm pretty optimistic that we're seeing, a lot of new studios and a lot of new games being built for the web. So I'm with you, hopeful. And Discovery can, there is no reason why you could not build a web store or something equivalent to Steam for web games. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. But I feel the momentum is there right now. So to close, as a veteran in the games industry, what advice would you give aspiring game developers looking to create web-based games and experiences?
Well, we've just kind of been talking about the fact that you have this huge audience when you target the web. And to me, that is like incredibly exciting. The fact that you could go onto PlayCanvas right now, spend the day just making a little casual game, hit publish, paste the link into Hacker News, and if your game is sufficiently fun and interesting to people, like it will make it to the front page of Hacker News, and you'll instantly get like a few 100,000 players of your game through one channel, right? Like you could put it on Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, so on and so forth. So there's like incredible control that you have as a web developer to put your content out there and have people play it. And I think that's incredibly exciting. Like nobody telling you what you can and can't publish, the ultimate freedom to publish the games that you want to make. So I would say it's a great place to learn. It's a great place it's a bit of a Wild West, but I mean, I'm a big fan of the web. It's very exciting. So I would encourage anybody to go there. And I'd recommend to come and just hang out on the PlayCanvas Discord and talk to some of the game developers already building stuff there, and they'll tell you some of their stories about why they love building on the web.
I love the enthusiasm. I love the encouragement. Well, is there any person or organization that you'd love to give a shout out to?
You mentioned Ken earlier. I've got to say, like, Ken's been awesome ever since we started PlayCanvas. I mean, what an ambassador for the web graphics community. So yeah, Ken Russell, what a guy. But also, I guess as like an organization, this kind of, I guess, takes me full circle back to the beginning where I said, I sort of grew up on an 8-bit computer. So here in the UK, we've got somewhere called the National Centre for Computing History, I think it is. Centre for Computing History. It's in Cambridge, and it's a living museum. You can go there and experience like computing and gaming hardware from the last like 40, 50 years.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking us through your inspiring journey, sharing insights into PlayCanvas technology and philosophy, and giving us a glimpse into the exciting future that lies ahead for open web standard, immersive experience, and AI-driven graphics. It was truly been an honor to have you on the podcast. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, guys. It's been a pleasure.
A big thank you as well to our ever-growing audience. You can find us on all the podcast platforms, and you can reach out to us on our LinkedIn page or our website, buildingtheopenmetaverse.org. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Will. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, guys.